Okay, here we go. The Padawan bites the dust. I'm not sure at what point that night Augie had cut off his Padawan braid, or why that made me really mad. I had also found his obsession with everything Star Wars was kind of geeky, and that braid in the back of his hair with its little beads was just awful. But he had always been so proud of it, of how it looked, of how long it took him to grow it, of how he had chosen the beads himself in a craft store in Soho. He and Christopher, his best friend, used to play with lightsabers and Star Wars stuff whenever they got together, and they had both started growing their braids at the same time. When August cut his braid off that night without an explanation, without telling me beforehand, which was surprising, or even calling Christopher, I was just so upset. I can't even explain why. I've seen Augie brushing his hair in the bathroom mirror. He meticulously tries to get every hair in place. He tilts his head to look at himself from different angles, like there's some magic perspective inside the mirror that could change the dimensions of his face. Mom knocked on my door after dinner. She looked drained, and I realized that between me and Augie, today had been a really tough day for her, too. So, you want to tell me what's up? She asked nicely and softly. Not now, okay, I answered. I was reading. I was tired. Maybe later I'd be up to telling her about Miranda, but not now. I'll check in before you go to bed, she said, and then she came over and kissed me on top of my head. Can Daisy sleep with me tonight? Sure, I'll bring her in later. Don't forget to come back, I said as she left. I promise. But she didn't come back that night. Dad did. He told me Augie had had a bad first day and Mom was helping him through it. He asked me how my day had gone, and I told him fine. He said he didn't believe me for a second, and I told him Miranda and Ella were acting like jerks. I didn't mention how I took the subway home by myself, though. He said nothing tests friendship like high school, and then proceeded to poke fun at the fact that I was reading War and Peace. And not real fun, of course, since I'd heard him brag to people that he had a 15-year-old who was reading Tolstoy. But he still liked to rib me about where I was in the book, in a war part or in a peace part, and if there was anything in there about Napoleon's days as a hip-hop dancer. It was silly stuff, but Dad always managed to make everyone laugh, and sometimes that's all you need to feel better. Don't be mad at Mom, he said as he bent down to give me a goodnight kiss. You know how much she worries about Augie. I know, I acknowledged. You want the light on or off? It's getting kind of late, he said, pausing by the light switch. Can you bring Daisy in first? 2 seconds later, he came back with Daisy dangling in his arms, and he laid her down next to me on the bed. Good night, sweetheart, he said, kissing my forehead. He kissed Daisy on her forehead, too. Good night, girlie. Sweet dreams. An apparition at the door. Once, I got up in the middle of the night because I was thirsty, and I saw Mom standing outside Augie's room. Her hand was on the doorknob, her forehead leaning on the door, which was ajar. She wasn't going in his room or stepping out, just standing right outside the door as if she was listening to the sound of his breathing as he slept. The hallway lights were out. The only thing illuminating her was the blue nightlight in August's bedroom. She looked ghost-like just standing there, or maybe I should say angelic. I tried to walk back into my room without disturbing her, but she heard me and walked over to me. Is Augie okay? I asked. I knew that sometimes he would wake up choking on his own saliva if he accidentally turned over on his back. Oh, he's fine, she said, wrapping her arms around me. She walked me back into my room, pulled the covers over me, and kissed me goodnight. She never explained what she was doing outside his door, and I never asked. I wonder how many nights she stood outside his door, and I wonder if she's ever stood outside my door like that. Breakfast. Can you pick me up from school today? I said the next morning, smearing some cream cheese on my bagel. Mom was making August's lunch, American cheese on whole wheat bread, soft enough for Augie to eat, while August sat eating oatmeal at the table. Dad was getting ready to go to work. Now that I was in high school, the new school routine was going to be that Dad and I would take the subway together in the morning, which meant his having to leave 15 minutes earlier than usual. And then I'd get off at my stop and he'd keep going. And Mom was going to pick me up after school in the car. I was going to call Miranda's mother to see if she could drive you home again, Mom answered. No, Mom, I said quickly. You pick me up or I'm going to just take the subway. You know I don't want you to take the subway by yourself, yet, she answered. Mom, I am 15. Everybody my age takes the subway by themselves. She can take the subway home, said Dad from the other room, adjusting his tie as he stepped into the kitchen. Why can't Miranda's mother just pick her up again? Mom argued with him. She's old enough to take the subway by herself, Dad insisted. Mom looked at both of us. Is something going on? She didn't address her question to either one of us in particular. You would know if you had come back to check on me, I said spitefully, like you said that you would. Oh God, Via, said Mom, remembering now how she had completely ditched me last night. She put down the knife she was using to cut Augie's grapes in half, still a choking hazard because of the size of his palate. I am so sorry. I fell asleep in Augie's room. By the time I woke up, I know. I nodded indifferently. Mom came over, put her hands on my cheeks, and lifted my face to look at her. I'm really, really sorry, she whispered. I could tell she was. It's okay, I said. Via, Mom, I'm fine. This time I really meant it. She looked so genuinely sorry. I just wanted to let her off the hook. She kissed and hugged me and then returned to the grapes. So, is something going on with Miranda? She asked. Just as she's acting like a complete jerk, I said. Miranda's not a jerk, Augie quickly chimed in. She can be, I yelled. Believe me. Okay, then, I'll pick you up. No problem, Mom said decisively, sweeping the half grapes into a snack bag with the side of her knife. That was the plan all along anyway. I'll pick Augie up from school in the car, and then we'll pick you up. We'll probably get there about 3:45. No, I said firmly before she'd even finished. Isabel, she can take the subway, said Dad impatiently. She's a big girl now. She's reading War and Peace, for crying out loud. What does War and Peace have to do with anything? Answered Mom, clearly annoyed. Means you don't have to pick her up in her car like she's a little girl, he said sternly. Via, are you ready? Get your bag. Let's go. I'm ready, I said, pulling out my backpack. Bye, Mom. Bye, Augie. I kissed them both quickly and headed toward the door. Do you even have a Metro card? Mom said after me. Of course she has a Metro card, answered Dad, fully exasperated. Yeesh, Mama, stop worrying so much. Bye, he said, kissing her on the cheek. Bye, big boy, he said to August, kissing him on the top of the head. I'm proud of you. Have a great day. Bye, Daddy, you too. Dad and I jogged down the stoop stairs and headed down the block. Call me after school before you get on the subway, Mom yelled at me from the window. I didn't even turn around, but waved my hand at her so she'd know I heard her. Dad did turn around, walking backwards for a few steps. War and peace, Isabel, he called out, smiling as he pointed at me. War and peace. Genetics 101. Both sides of Dad's family were Jews from Russia and Poland. Papa's grandparents fled the pogroms and ended up in New York City at the turn of the century. Tata's parents fled the Nazis and ended up in Argentina in the 40s. Papa and Tata met at a dance on the Lower East Side while she was in town visiting a cousin. They got married, moved to Bayside, and had Dad and Uncle Ben. Mom's side of the family is from Brazil, except for her mother, my beautiful grands, and her dad, Augusto, who died before I was born. The rest of Mom's family, all of her glamorous aunts, uncles, and cousins, still live in Alto Leblon, a ritzy suburb south of Rio. Grands and Augusto moved to Boston in the early 60s and had Mom and Aunt Kate, who's married to Uncle Porter. Mom and Dad met at Brown University and have been together ever since. Isabella and Nate like two peas in a pod. They moved to New York right after college, had me a few years later, and then moved to a brick townhouse in North River Heights, the hippie stroller capital of upper Manhattan, when I was about a year old. Not one person in the exotic mix of my family gene pool has ever shown any obvious signs of having what August has. I've pored over grainy sepia pictures of long dead relatives in babushkas, black and white snapshots of distant cousins in crisp white linen suits, soldiers in uniform, ladies with beehive hairdos, Polaroids of bell-bottom teenagers and long-haired hippies, and not once have I been able to detect even the slightest trace of August's face in their faces. Not one. But after August was born, my parents underwent genetic counseling. They were told that August had what seemed to be a previously unknown type of mandibulofacial dysostosis caused by an autosomal recessive mutation in the TCOFI gene, which is located on chromosome 5, complicated by a hemifacial microsomnia characteristic of the OAV spectrum. Did you get that?
No.
Sometimes these mutations occur during pregnancy, and sometimes they're inherited from one parent carrying the dominant gene. Sometimes they're caused by the interaction of many genes, possibly in combination with environmental factors. This is called multifactorial inheritance. In August's case, the doctors were able to identify one of the single nucleotide deletion mutations that made war on his face. The weird thing is that you'd never know it from looking at them. Both of my parents carry the mutant gene, and I carry it too.
What?
So both of the parents have the gene that made him that way, and she has it also. What does that mean for her? No, it's a gene. And if she carries it in her body, her baby might have it. The gene, the Augie face gene.
The Augie face gene.
No, so
The thing that Augie
You
has.
said Augie face gene. Yeah, so her baby could have.
they're not genes like you wear. They're genes that make up your body.
Yeah,
Like your DNA. Have you heard of DNA?
I know
So
you
genes are another word for DNA, which is what makes you who you are. So like your facial features are genes, and the color of your eyes, like do your parents have the same color of your eyes? Maybe one of them, but not necessarily both. So the chances of you getting that color eyes was really high because your whole family has that color. But like my husband has really blue eyes. My mother has really blue eyes, but I have really like hazily colored eyes. Delaney was born with really blue eyes. So she got Jason's dominant gene and not my recessive. My gene was recessive, the eye color. So every single component of you is a gene. Does that make sense?
He has
Brown or more is normally dominant, which is
What is?
brown.
Yeah. All right. So there's a little snippet on genes, and we will talk about that in science this year. No, I still have chapters to go, but I extended it to 9:40. I think I changed it reading time. What is it? Oh, yeah, that's good.
Chicken biscuit.
No, we just need 3. No, that's great. Okay. Pick a paper. Okay, the Punnett square. If I have children, oh, here she goes. She's going to explain it to you. If I have children, there's a 1 in 2 chance that I will pass on the defective gene to them. That doesn't mean that they'll look like August, but they'll carry the gene that got double dosed in August and help make him the way that he is. If I marry someone who has the same defective gene, there's a 1 in 2 chance that our kids will carry the gene and look totally normal. A 1 in 4 chance that our kids will not carry the gene at all, and a 1 in 4 chance that our kids will look like August. If August has children with someone who doesn't have a trace of the gene, there's a 100% probability that their kids will inherit the gene, but a 0% chance that their kids will have a double dose of it like August, which means they'll carry the gene no matter what, but they could look totally normal. If you marry someone who has the gene, their kids will have the same odds as my kids. This only explains the part of August that's explainable. There's that other part of his genetic makeup that's not inherited, but it's just incredibly bad luck. Countless doctors have drawn little tic-tac-toe grids for my parents over the years to try to explain the genetic lottery to them. Geneticists use the Punnett square to determine inheritance, recessive, and dominant genes, probabilities, and chances. But for all they knew, there's more they don't know. They can try to forecast the odds, but they can't guarantee them. They use terms like germline mosaicism, chromosome rearrangement, or delayed mutation to explain why their science is not an exact science. I actually like how doctors talk. I like the sound of science. I like how words you don't understand explain things you can't understand. There are countless people under words like germline mosaicism, chromosome rearrangement, or delayed mutation. Countless babies who will never be born, like mine. What does that mean?
You'll never have children.
She's not going to have babies
Why?
because there's a chance they'll look like him.
Oh.
And she's not willing to risk it.
Oh.
Out with the
It's
old
not just about that. Think about all the surgeries and all
and the
pain
problems.
you've
Yeah.
gone through for a mother, that is so hard, I'm sure.
She might. I don't know. She doesn't go into that.
Oopsies.
Out with the old. Miranda and Ella blasted off. They attached themselves to a new crowd, destined for a high school glory. After a week of painful lunches where all they would do was talk about people that didn't interest me, I decided to make a clean break for it. They asked no questions and I told no lies. We just went our separate ways. I didn't even mind after a while. I stopped going to lunch for about a week though to make the transition easier and to avoid the fake, oh shoot, there's no room for you at this table. Sorry, I lost my place. Oh shoot, there's no room for you at this table, Olivia. It was easier to just go to the library and read. When I was in high school, I didn't go to the lunchroom either in my freshman year. No, sophomore year, because there was a cute boy in the library. And so I spent my days going there to sit and talk to him instead of going to lunch. He had work study in the library and it was my lunchtime. So I hung out in there. We ended up dating. But anyway, separate story. No. High school?
You?
What?
That little dating one? Wait, what
Did
was
you
his
not
name?
listen to my story, Frederick?
No.
Oh, wow, you
What's
missed
his
it.
name? What's his name?
His name was Philip.
And was he blonde?
Yes, he was blonde.
Where'd you break up Philip? When I was
I don't know.
He
He was a senior and I was a sophomore. I shouldn't have even been talking to him. Yeah,
Who said I love you?
I went to prom for 3 years in a row.
With him?
No, I didn't go to prom at all with him
Why?
because we weren't dating at prom time. All right, we gotta finish. I finished War and Peace in October. It was amazing. People think it's such a hard read, but it's really just a soap opera with lots of characters. People falling in love, fighting for love, dying for love. I want to be in love like that someday. I want my husband to love me the way Prince Andre loved Natasha. I ended up hanging out with a girl named Eleanor, who I'd known from my days at PS22 that we'd gone to different middle schools. Eleanor had always been a really smart girl. I mean, a little bit of a crybaby back then, but very nice. I'd never realized how funny she was. I mean, not laugh out loud funny like dad, but full of great quips. And she never knew how lighthearted I could be. Eleanor, I guess, had always been under the impression that I was very serious. And as it turns out, she never liked Miranda and Ella. She thought they were stuck up. I gained entry through Eleanor to the smart kids table at lunch. It was a larger group than I'd been accustomed to hanging out with and a more diverse crowd. It included Eleanor's boyfriend, Kevin, who would definitely become class president someday, a few techie guys, girls like Eleanor, who were members of the yearbook committee and the debate club, and a quiet guy named Justin, who had small round glasses and played the violin, and who I had an instant crush on. When I'd see Miranda and Ella, who are now hanging out with the super popular set, we would say, hey, what's up? Move on. Occasionally, Miranda would ask me how August was doing and then say, tell him I said hello. This I never did, not to spite Miranda, but because August was in his own world these days. There were times at home we never even crossed paths. October 31st. Grants had died the night before Halloween. Since then, even though it's been 4 years, this has always been a sad time of year for me. For Mom, too, though she doesn't always say it. Instead, she immerses herself in getting August's costume ready, since we all know Halloween is his favorite time of year. This year was no different. August really wanted to be a Star Wars character called Boba Fett. So Mom looked for a Boba Fett costume in August's size, which strangely enough was out of stock everywhere. She went to every online store, found a few on eBay that were going for an outrageous amount, and finally ended up buying a Jango Fett costume that she then converted into a Boba Fett costume by painting it green. I would say in all, she must have spent 2 weeks working on that stupid costume. And no, I won't mention the fact that Mom had never made any of my costumes because it really has no bearing on anything at all. The morning of Halloween, I woke up thinking about Grans, which made me really sad and weepy. Dad kept telling me to hurry up and get dressed, which just stressed me out even more. And suddenly I started crying. I just wanted to stay home. So Dad took August to school that morning, and Mom said I could stay home, and the two of us cried together for a while. One thing I knew for sure, however much I missed Grans, Mom must have missed her more. All those times August was clinging to life after a surgery, all those rush trips to the ER, Grants had always been there for Mom. It felt good to cry with her, for both of us. At some point, Mom had the idea of us watching The Ghost and Mrs. Moir together, which was one of our all-time favorite black and white movies. I agreed that this was a great idea. I think I probably would have used this weeping session as an opportunity to tell Mom everything that was going on at school with Miranda and Ella, but just as we were sitting down in front of the DVD player, the phone rang. It was the nurse from August's school calling to tell Mom that August had a stomach ache and should be picked up. So much for the old movies and the mother-daughter bonding. Mom went and picked August up, and the moment he came home, he went straight into the bathroom and threw up. Then he went to his bed and pulled the covers over his head. Mom took his temperature, brought him some hot tea, and assumed the August's mom role again. Via's mom, who had come out for just a little while, was then put away. I understood, though. August was in bad shape. Neither one of us asked him why he had worn his Bleeding Scream costume to school instead of the Boba Fett costume Mom had made for him. If it annoyed Mom to see the costume she had worked on for 2 weeks tossed on the floor and unused, she didn't show it. Trick or treat. August said he wasn't feeling well enough to go trick-or-treating later in the afternoon, which was sad for him because I know how much he loved trick-or-treating, especially after it got dark outside. Even though I was well beyond the trick-or-treating stage myself, I usually threw on some mask or other to accompany him up and down the blocks, watching him knock on people's door, giddy with excitement. I knew it was the one night a year when he could truly be like every other kid. No one knew he was different under the mask. To August, that must have felt absolutely amazing. At 7 o'clock that night, I knocked on his door. Hey, I said. Hey, he said back. He wasn't using his PlayStation or reading a comic book. He was just lying on his bed looking at the ceiling. Daisy, as always, was next to him on the bed, her head draped over his legs. The Bleeding Scream costume was crumpled up onto the floor next to the Boba Fett costume. How's your stomach? I said, sitting next to him on the bed. I'm still nauseous. You sure you're not up for the Halloween parade? Positive. This surprised me. Usually August was such a trooper about his medical issues, whether it was skateboarding a few days after a surgery or sipping food through a straw when his mouth was practically bolted shut. This was a kid who'd gotten more shots taken, more medicines, put up more procedures by the age of 10 than most people would have to put up with in 10 lifetimes. And he was sidelined from a little nausea. You want to tell me what's up? I said, sounding a little bit like Mom. No. Is it school? Yes. Teachers, schoolwork, friends? He didn't answer. Someone say something, I asked. People always say something, he answered bitterly. I could tell he was close to crying. Tell me what happened, I said. And he told me what happened. He had overheard some very mean things some boys were saying about him. He didn't care what the other boys had said. He expected that, but he was so hurt by one of his best friends, Jack Will. I remembered him mentioning Jack a couple of times over the past few months. I remembered Mom and Dad saying he seemed like a really nice kid, saying they were glad August had already made a friend like that. Sometimes kids are stupid, I said softly, holding his hand. I'm sure he didn't mean it. Then why would he say it? He's been pretending to be my friend all along. Tushman probably bribed him with good grades or something. I bet he was like, hey, Jack, if you make friends with the freak, you don't have to take any tests this year. You know that's not true, and don't call yourself a freak. Whatever. I wish I'd never gone to school in the first place, but I thought you were liking it. No, I hate it. He was angry all of a sudden, punching his pillow. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. He was shrieking at the top of his lungs. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. He was hurt. He was mad. I let him have a few more minutes of his fury, and Daisy started licking the tears off of his face. Come on, Augie, I said, putting his back gently. Why don't you put on your Jango Fett costume? And it's a Boba Fett costume. Why does everyone keep mixing that up? Okay, your Boba Fett costume, I said, trying to stay calm. I put my arm around his shoulders. Let's just go to the parade, okay? If I go to the parade, Mom will think I'm feeling better and make me go to school tomorrow. Mom would never make you go to school, I answered. Come on, Augie, let's just go. It'll be fun, I promise, and I'll let you have all my candy. He didn't argue. He got out of bed, slowly started putting on his Boba Fett costume. I helped him adjust the straps and tighten the belt, and by the time we put his helmet on, I could tell he was feeling better.
It felt like a spider. There's a spider right here.
Get it? All right, last chapter.
It felt like we read that. Right here, see?
Well, because we read it from Augie's perspective, remember? This is from his sisters.
Wait, more?
No, they're up there in the they're up there in the box. All right, last chapter. And then we've got 30 minutes of reading.
Oh. Wait, this is
I know, then 30 minutes of the next reading. Okay, time to think. August played up the stomach ache for the next day so he wouldn't have to go to school. I admit I felt a little bad for Mom, who was genuinely concerned that he had a stomach bug, but I had promised August I wouldn't tell her about the incident at school. By Sunday, he was still determined not to go back to school. What are you planning on telling Mom and Dad? I asked him. When he told me this, they said I could quit whenever I wanted to, he said. He said this while he was still focused on a comic book he was reading. But you've never been the kind of kid to quit things, I said truthfully. That's not like you. Oh, I'm quitting. You're going to have to tell Mom and Dad why, I pointed out, pulling the comic book out of his hand so he have to look up at me while we were talking. Then Mom will call the school and everyone will know about it. Will Jack get in trouble? I would think so. Good. I have to admit, August was surprising me more and more. He pulled another comic book off his shelf and started leafing through it. Augie, I said, are you really going to let a couple of stupid kids keep you from going back to school? I know you've been enjoying it. Don't give them that power over you. Don't give them the satisfaction. They have no idea I even heard them, he explained. No, I know, but Via, it's okay. I know what I'm doing. I've made up my mind. But this is crazy, Augie, I said empathetically, pulling the new comic book away from him too. You have to go back to school. Everyone hates school sometimes. I hate school sometimes. I hate my friends sometimes. It's just life, Augie. You want to be treated normally, right? Well, this is normal. We all have to go to school sometimes, despite the fact that we have bad days, okay? Do people go out of their way to avoid touching you, Via? He answered, which left me momentarily without an answer. Yeah, right. That's what I thought. So don't compare your bad day at school to mine, okay? All right, that's not fair, I said, but it's not a contest about whose days suck the most, Augie. The point is, we all have to put up with the bad days. Now, unless you want to be treated like a baby the rest of your life or like a kid with special needs, you have to just suck it up and go. He didn't say anything, but I think that last little bit was getting to him. You don't have to say a word to those kids, I continued. August, actually, it's so cool that you know what they said, but they don't know that you know what they said, you know? What the heck? You know what I mean. You don't have to talk to them ever again if you don't want to, and they'll never know why, see? Or you can pretend to be friends with them, but deep down, you know you're not. Is that how you are with Miranda, he asked. No, I answered quickly and defensively. I never faked my feelings with Miranda. So why are you saying I should? I'm not. I'm just saying you shouldn't let those little jerks get to you. That's all. Like Miranda got to you. Why do you keep bringing Miranda up? I yelled impatiently. I'm trying to talk to you about your friends. Please keep mine out of it. You're not even friends with her anymore. What's that have to do with what we're talking about? The way August was looking at me reminded me of a doll's face. He was just staring at me blankly with his half-closed doll eyes. She called the other day, he said finally. What? I was stunned. And you didn't tell me? She wasn't calling you, he answered, pulling both comic books out of my hands. She was calling me just to say hi, to see how I was doing. She didn't even know I was going to a real school now. I can't believe you hadn't even told her that. She said the two of you don't hang out as much anymore, but she wanted me to know she'd always loved me like a big sister. Double stunned, stung, flabbergasted. No words formed in my mouth. Why didn't you tell me? I said finally. I don't know, he shrugged, opening the first comic book again. Well, I'm telling mom and dad about Jack will if you stop going to school, I answered. Tishman will probably call you into school, make Jack and all his other kids apologize in front of everybody, and everybody's going to treat you like a kid who should be going to a school for kids with special needs. Is that what you want? Because that's what's going to happen. Otherwise, just go back to school and act like nothing happened. Or if you want to confront Jack about it, fine. But either way, if you, fine, he interrupted. What? Fine, I'll go, he yelled, not loudly. Stop talking about it already. Can you just leave so I can read my book now? Fine, I answered, turning to leave his room. I thought of something. Did Miranda say anything else about me? He looked up from his comic book and looked right in my eyes. She said to tell you she misses you, quote, unquote. I nodded. Thanks, I said casually, too embarrassed to let him see how happy that made me feel. All right, so the next chapter is part 3, Summer, which is going to be from Summer's point of view. That's why they made me read so much today. So the sign-off question is, compare Halloween from Via's perspective to what we already read of Augie's point of view. How are they similar or different? You have to compare and contrast. All right, I'm going to stop recording. It took forever.
Wait, why do you